happened on this planet in the last 7 days. We need to sit back and listen to the Iron Fist and the Velvet Glove.
Welcome back, dear listener. Episode 278. We're really getting our teeth into the 6th year of this podcast now. And the world is not slowing down in terms of news and craziness. If anything, it's speeding up. This is the Iron Fist Velvet Glove podcast. I'm Trevor, a.k.a. the Iron Fist. With me, as always, for the moment, until he gets a job in some far-flung remote location, Scott the Velvet Glove.
G'day, Trevor. G'day, Paul. G'day, Joe. G'day, listeners. And for those of you that are keeping track, I am still on the dole, but I did have 3 interviews last week, and I've got another 2 this week, so something out of that will come up.
I can assure you he is earning his dole money. And, Paul, I think you might have your volume on your computer, because I can hear you coming through.
I just enlarged it, but
right.
I didn't click on let the volume come through. Sorry about that, everyone.
It just did it magically.
I don't know why. It just did it spontaneously when I enlarged the screen. But anyway.
No problem.
You cocked up, Paul.
So, Paul, you are the 12th man. Welcome aboard yet again.
Thank you, Trevor. Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, listeners and viewers.
And, of course, Joe is here with tech stuff, and he will chime in when we're talking shite to sort of pull us back into line. Welcome aboard again, Joe.
Evening, everyone.
Right. So here we are. We're in a post-election sort of period in the US. We'll get onto that because there's still plenty to talk about, I think, and particularly when it comes to speech and what happened with the different news services basically pulling the press conference before it had finished. I thought all that was quite interesting. The whole concept of free speech, I think we'll talk a bit about that. This is the most interesting thing at the moment with that. But before we do, there was a bit of a news last night on Four Corners. I didn't watch the whole thing. I just caught snippets of it. But about Christian Porter and the allegation that he'd been having an affair with a young staffer and things like that. And that occupied an entire Four Corners episode. And I asked the question, do we care? Because I don't.
Really?
I really don't care. Tell me why I should care who he's sleeping with and what he's doing in that sense.
Family values.
Yeah, I don't care about his family values.
Well, Malcolm Turnbull said that at that level of government, people expose themselves to dangerous pressure, blackmail, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but I think those days are over.
Do you think?
Well, you can be,
There are
in the days of celebrity,
everywhere.
in the days of celebrity porn, is there a security risk? Like, it must be tough for extortionists now because you can catch somebody doing all sorts of things and go, I've got you now. You'll be too embarrassed if I release this. You'll have to, do all the things I want you to do. And people go, no, go ahead and do it. Like, I'll just be even more fun. Like, that sort of threat of extortion.
Maybe not in the press, but maybe towards his family.
Well,
Yeah, but
his second wife is separated from him already.
Exactly.
Like,
So, is he actually married? No, he's not.
Well, he might be separated.
who isn't married?
He might be just separated
Well,
now.
Christian Porter. Okay, he's
Yeah,
separated.
He's been married twice.
Yeah.
Okay, well, he's apparently separated from his second wife. Now, I'm assuming that the playing up and that sort of stuff happened after he'd separated, had it?
No, it probably preceded it.
No, that was
probably
about 2 years ago, wasn't it?
I think this has happened since.
Right, okay.
So let's assume that he was still with his wife and these things were
I
happening,
watched the
which
Four
was the whole
Corners.
point of his lack of morals as alleged by Four Corners.
Yeah, I know. And
I don't think it was about morality so much as integrity, publicly sort of preaching family values and that sort of thing, and then privately not practicing the family values. It makes the government look bad. It makes the government look like they say one thing and do another. And I think that's why the Prime Ministers, Turnbull and Morrison, were not happy about it.
Yeah. Does anybody...
I watched Four Corners today.
What's that?
the chat room.
You wanted to scroll back up?
Yeah, no, just down to Bronwyn Burn.
Yep.
I don't care about who Christian Porter is sleeping with, but I do care about his retrograde attitudes towards women, which are very much out of step with current community attitudes.
Yeah.
Fair enough, but I didn't think it was worth an entire episode on Four Corners.
Mm.
That's probably the most blunt and brutal thing I will say on it.
If he was a friend, I'd want to know, but he's just a politician.
If he was a friend, you'd want to know.
Yeah, I would want to know if I would want to know if my friend is that sort of disloyal sort of character.
Oh, I see, yeah.
But as a politician, I don't hold out high hopes. Like, it just wouldn't surprise me if 50% of them are playing up. I mean, you put people in Canberra away from their families, high stress situations, they're working hard.
That point was made in the Four Corners program.
What do you expect is going to happen? To me, it just doesn't surprise me.
It doesn't surprise me either. It's just one of those things that's really...
And I just really don't want to... I just don't think we should be concerned with what's happening in people's bedrooms. So, yeah, that's my personal view. I mean, I've got a theory that Putin didn't disclose Trump's antics with Russian hookers because it would have only added to the Trump legend. You know, like this is the problem for extortionists now.
Yeah, but see, I think Trump would probably have a reason to try and keep something like that quiet because his base is basically evangelical Christians.
Mm.
Now, I know they'd forgiven a hell of a lot, but I don't think they would have forgiven...
They forgave Trump enormous amounts.
Yeah, I know, but...
If you promise them a law that they like, they'll forgive anything.
They give him a free pass.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. But they didn't forgive him completely, did they? Because he's been voted out. But...
No, but the evangelicals,
They didn't vote him out.
87% voted for him.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And that's after he got caught with paying off the porn star. There was all sorts of... he was well known.
Found by the pussy or...
Yeah, all that sort of shit.
Yeah.
I mean, it was absolutely...
Stormy Daniels, he paid money to.
That was it. Well, he didn't. His lawyer did.
Oh, okay. So he didn't.
Anyway, in the chat room, there seems to be more of a consensus that people do want to know by the looks of the comments in there. So Daniel's made comments and Dire Straits and Greg. So I don't know. Just personally, I really don't think we should be looking at what's going on in people's bedrooms. I don't care. I don't elect officials to the federal parliament on the basis of my view of their morality so much.
Yeah, but don't
think
you
on
think
issues of like that?
Okay, the other side of the coin is that I can't remember where Christian Porter stood on the same-sex marriage debate, but some of the shit that was coming from that side of Parliament, saying that it's going to devalue marriage and all that sort of shit, and you got him screwing around on his wife, that would have made him look
I'm sure
incredibly
he said
hypocritical.
that a marriage is between a man and a woman, and he's been on the side. So, I think that's from the shovel.
It goes to the issue of trust, doesn't it? So if the...
But I don't trust any of them, so that's why I don't care.
No, you don't. But you're a special case.
I'm cynical.
But
you're
a lot
right.
of the voters, well, at least we'd like to think a lot of the voters trust the government. Now, if they hear the government saying one thing, and then it comes out, in the press, whether it's just gossip or whatever, that they're doing quite another thing from what they, sort of propose they're doing, or then it undermines trust in the government. I think it undermines our confidence in their integrity, which goes to a range of issues. It's not just about what they do in the bedroom, but what they do in other meetings.
Yeah, I mean, if a Catholic priest is on his knees in a public toilet, then that's relevant to the Catholic priest's job, I think.
Do they pray in public toilets too?
Well, they get up to all sorts of mischief in there. So just... I guess it's your view of the job, so I don't see them as...
It's less around the view of the job and more the figure that they're presenting in public and whether they really are who they say they are. And if you're voting on them to...
So he's a liar in that sense.
Basically.
Right. That's fair enough. What if he hadn't presented himself as a family man?
I think then it's irrelevant.
Okay, so they did show on Four Corners, the bit I saw, where pictures of him with his kids and his family attending events, picturing him as the family man. So if they hadn't have done that, then maybe they shouldn't be.
I think if he had stood as, for instance, Fiona Patton, if Fiona Patton was having an open relationship, I don't think her constituents would be that surprised because she isn't holding herself up as a family values sort of person.
Right. But if she'd advocated for one thing and was living something else,
Absolutely.
then it's relevant. Okay. So on the basis that he was putting himself out as a family man Christian, it's relevant that he's a liar.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think he is actually a Christian. He just says you've got to believe in God because it's dangerous not to, if you remember the Liberal Party.
That's true. He did say that.
Well, he describes himself as not very religious,
Yeah.
Christian Porter.
Yeah.
But the other one, I think, is more of a Christian, isn't he? What's his
Alan
name?
Tudge.
Alan Tudge. Isn't he a more
Right.
straight down the line guy? I'm not sure.
Okay. So if you're putting yourself out as somebody like that, then okay, I get it. It's either way.
But look, can I just add? I watched it this afternoon, and I have to say it did look like a little bit gossipy. You know, interviewing sort of parliamentary staffers who took a dim view of his behaviour, and even one woman that knew him from I think Western Australia when he was working in the law.
Mm-hmm.
And, said, he was a typical guy and maybe a misogynist, and I think he just used women, and, she was really, it was really a hit.
Gossipy.
Yeah.
In the chat room, Greg says, I wouldn't care except for the hypocrisy. I guess that's what we're coming down to as well. Yeah.
I think.
We're with you on that one, Greg.
Hypocrisy and trust.
Right. US election, when we last spoke, it was still up in the air, wasn't it? We didn't really know. It was kind of looking Biden-ish.
It was looking Biden-ish, but we couldn't actually call it because there were a number of states yet to go.
Yeah.
Most of those states have now reported, and Joe Biden has collected 290 of the Electoral College votes. He only needed 270. So congratulations, Mr. Biden. You are now President-elect of the United States.
Yeah, he's certainly listening. Well done, Joe. He might even pick up more than 300 if Georgia falls his way, I think.
There are 34 Electoral College votes still yet to be counted, still yet to be decided upon. So if he ends up with 17 of them, he ends up at 287. But have to wait and see.
End of the day, it doesn't really have any effect what the ultimate margin is.
No.
So
Just has to be 270.
yeah, that's it. Yep. So last week we spoke about the Sam Harris revelation, where he was trying to work out why are these people voting for Trump, and what his theory was, well, at least Trump doesn't insult these people. He doesn't make a judgment against them, and that seemed to make sense. But I am just, as I am looking at some right-wing friends of mine on Facebook and their comments, and I'm looking at Sky News and other ones, there's lots of people in Australia who aren't really being accused of being racist. They're totally outside the American sphere, but they're still very pro-Trump. I just don't get well-educated Australians who are able to access all information, who aren't being accused of being rednecks, who are still pro-Trump. I just don't get how much support there is in Australia for him. I get that there's a lot in America, but I just don't get the level of Australian support. So
I think it's just some people are really turned off by the far left now.
And I think it's a case of the mainstream media and the far left are all biased, and therefore we're not getting the real news on the corruption, and they do buy into he's the person that's showing up the truth, and that the mainstream media are just smearing him.
But if you don't like the far left, Joe Biden is not the far left. Like
No,
he's so obviously conservative left. It's so obvious.
He isn't. But it's thought that there are elements in the Democratic Party that are quite far left.
I don't know. The man's got such a track record of being a very right
Middle
wing
of the road kind
lefty.
of guy.
8 years as vice president, his voting record as a senator.
Yeah.
There's nothing lefty about Joe Biden.
Not very much.
I just don't get the scare that there's an effective scare campaign about him being a lefty socialist.
But he is 78.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And his vice president is...
Yeah.
Even she is not exactly hard left, is she?
No. I mean, she's very hard as a prosecutor.
Quite conservative in a sense, wasn't she, as a prosecutor, from what I've read?
So she's not as hard a little bit more left than I originally thought, but still, you know,
And
she's no Bernie
pro-
Sanders.
Yeah.
She's no Elizabeth Warren. She's no AOC. They really picked quite people who should be quite palatable to Republicans who were sick of Trump and his antics and who were willing to change and were looking for a safe Democrat option. Those two should have appeared safe. I can't believe that this sort of fear of socialism managed to stick on those two, because they're far from being lefty socialists in my view.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but if you've got Murdoch Press
yes, brainwashing you.
bagging them all the time as being socialists,
Yeah, but even Fox has already walked away from Donald Trump because, you know, I saw a report tonight where they were saying that President Trump really has to go.
Oh, and they cut away from him in the middle of the press conference. They're currently calling 290 seats for him, for Joe Biden at the moment.
Yeah, 290, yeah.
Right. So other things. So obviously Trump's come out and he's basically been saying, as he was in the lead up to the election, he was anticipating there was going to be a fraud if he didn't win. And now he's claiming that the election is a fraud. And that's getting quite a blowback, even from Fox News and other. And the Republican Party is kind of split on this one now. So there's a substantial number of Republicans who are saying, hang on a minute, you've got no proof of this. You're crossing a line here. I guess they can see that he's out of the picture. He's no longer president. So in the past where they were scared to talk against him, they're now able to read the tea leaves quite clearly and go, well, there's no point pandering to this man anymore because he's gone. But at least there's some hope in that the Republicans are pulling up and Fox is pulling up and saying, hang on a minute, where's your evidence on this? So it's just a embarrassment for the country, the way he's carrying on.
So there was talk about him running in 2024, but the more he carries on,
Right.
the less likely that is, because he's just going to be seen as a poor loser.
Yeah.
However, people are saying that one of the children could quite possibly run.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, can you imagine Don Jr. or Ivanka?
Well, he wants to paint a picture that he was robbed and then in 4 years' time he could come back and
He'll be
and
dead by then.
say, let's get this right. Now, people voted for me before and now this time we'll do it.
I think he'll be too tarred, but his children,
He'll be what?
too tarred.
Right.
Tarred or tired?
No, tarred. As in
tar and feathers?
as in he's been seen as ungracious, going, kicking and screaming.
He'll
That's
be
a great
forgiven.
idea,
He'll be
Joe.
forgiven. Like, of all the things he's done
Well,
in
that's
his
true.
career, this is one of the least of it. A hissy
I
thing.
reckon, here's an idea, I reckon those senior Republican parties who see him as sullying the reputation of the whole party with his behaviour, they should go in, tar and feather him, and then chase him out the gate. And then he'll be really tarred.
Well, there was talk of resurrecting Mitt Romney because he's been the most vocal Trump critic.
He comes across as very mature and level-headed, doesn't he, compared to Trump?
Well, until you remember that he's a Mormon.
Yeah, but I mean, quite apart from his religion, which is mad, he does come across as a very sort of sensible person on the whole.
Absolutely.
Okay, so there's funny things, different things have happened. Did you see Rudy Giuliani is Trump's advisor, and he called a press conference because he was going to outline some of the fraudulent actions that have been taking place in the various states, and somebody in his group who booked the
Four Seasons.
thought they were booking the Four Seasons hotel.
That was hilarious.
But in fact, booked the Four Seasons total landscaping, which was just this cruddy little landscaping business that was squeezed between a sex shop and a crematorium. And that's where they ended up having the press conference
Hilarious,
in
isn't
the back lot of Four Seasons landscaping.
There is a hypothesis that actually Trump had made the statement that it was going to be at the Four Seasons, and rather than backing down from that, they hunted desperately around to find a Four Seasons that would accept them.
I like the idea that one of the staffers has just rung up the Four Seasons landscaping and said, it's the Trump campaign. We want to book our press conference there. And somebody hates Trump on the phone and said, sure, we're free, taking their money and not said a thing. I think that's what's just as likely as happening. The nuts and bolts of how that happened would be very interesting.
I was listening to, oh God, I can't think what it's called. It's an Australian podcast. No, it's gone.
Angry Men or something? You always
It's sorry?
Two Angry Men or something?
No.
It's something you'd expect to see on Saturday Night Live or
Absolutely.
some show like that, isn't it?
Yes.
And they were saying that he'd read a tweet that said that Rudy Giuliani was stuck between a cock and a chard place.
Right.
Because it was the adult
Between a cock
bookshop
and a
on
chard
one side
place.
and where
You
you
mean
burn
good.
people on the other side. So
That's good. Yep. So anyway, people voted against Trump, obviously, and this didn't really carry through in the Congress or the Senate. Like it seems pretty clear that they didn't do very well there at all. And in the Senate, there's going to be a runoff in 2 Senate positions. So at the moment, it's 50 to 48 with the Republicans in the lead. And there were 2 Senate seats where there wasn't a majority. So in order to be elected, you need a majority of votes. And some Republicans, I think, got to like 49.7 or something like that. Didn't quite get over the line. So they have a runoff on those. So potentially there's a chance that the Democrats could win those seats in a runoff. Apparently in a runoff, their chances are better than it would have been in a general election. I don't know how that
So
works.
the runoff is the 2 top contenders go head-to-head in a second round of voting.
Right. And that might suit the Democrats more?
Well, it's just obviously you don't get to vote for third parties.
Right.
And therefore any watering down of votes. So if there's, for instance, a Greens, you wouldn't bleed Democrat votes off to the Greens.
Okay. So that might help the Democrats, in which case you could end up with 50-50 in the Senate.
which then gives Kamala Harris the deciding vote.
Yes. So apparently Kamala Harris would then have the deciding vote in any split decisions.
Mm.
That was in the state of Georgia, I think, wasn't it?
Georgia
is,
and one other. There's two states.
2 different
I
states?
thought it was
Yeah.
just in Georgia, wasn't it?
No, there's a second one.
Sure.
I have a feeling we're both in Georgia.
Yeah, I thought they were both
both in
in
Georgia.
Georgia.
We can look that up anyway. But in any event, that's an interesting scenario. Wouldn't that be delicious if you were Kamala Harris to come in on 50-50 votes and into the Senate? So we're now deciding this way. Like, it'd be a great feeling if you end up doing
It would also facilitate getting their legislative agenda through.
Indeed. So,
Well, it depends. Like, I mean, the Americans, I know they're all polarised and all that sort of stuff, but you got to look at the history of it all. Clinton didn't get his own way with his Senate and that sort of stuff. Obama didn't get his own way with his Democrat-dominated Senate. You do still have a hell of a lot of horse trading that goes on to get things done. So we'll have to wait and see, but I would have thought that even at 50-50, you're not guaranteed of getting everything you want done.
Yep.
Although Obama only had control of the Senate for the first 2 years, I think, didn't he?
Yeah, for the first...
Not long.
Not
Yeah.
long.
It
I
was
think
2 years is what I read, and then there was, what do they call it, the midterms?
Yeah, midterms.
And the Republicans took control of the Senate after that.
Yeah,
And they were very obstructive too, weren't they?
they're extremely obstructive.
So let's look at what Trump was saying and how his comments were cut short by the different media organisations. So the sorts of things that he was saying was, we're hearing stories that are horror stories. We think there's going to be a lot of litigation because we have so much evidence and so much proof. But in fact, Trump produced no evidence of systemic problems in voting or counting. In fact, ballot counting process across the country has been running smoothly for the most part. Trump said, in Pennsylvania, partisan Democrats have allowed ballots in the state to be received 3 days after the election. But in fact, the state Supreme Court, not partisan Democrats, ordered that ballots filled out before the end of the election day could be received up to 3 days later and still be counted. Trump said, Pennsylvania Democrats have gone to the state Supreme Court to try and ban our election observers. They don't want anybody in there. They don't want anybody watching them while they are counting the ballots. But that's false again. The president is wholly misrepresenting the court case. No one tried to ban poll watchers representing each side, and Democrats did not try to stop Republican representatives from being able to observe the process. The main issue was how close the observers could stand.
Didn't the judge actually threaten the bar registration of one of the lawyers?
Really?
Yes.
Well, no, I didn't hear that.
No. So
Wow.
they were saying, so how many do you want? And they were just going, as many as the Democrats. And they're saying, no, name a number. And yeah, how many people are there? Oh, well, it's not a zero number. And basically said, if you carry on like this, I'm going to have you revoked by the bar.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good.
On what grounds?
Basically.
Shoddy workmanship
Basically.
as a lawyer. You're being totally disingenuous in allowing a claim that you...
So you have to go
Haven't
in
prepped.
with a clear claim. You can't just make it up in front as you're standing in front of the
It was
judge.
clearly...
Exactly.
Clearly,
Exactly.
you're talking bullshit and you haven't come with a genuine claim.
Basically.
Right. Your case is so bad that you shouldn't have walked into this court and wasted my time. You
Yeah.
owe the court, because you owe the court a duty in a sense as well as a lawyer. So, yeah.
As an ex-lawyer, Trevor, doesn't it give you just a slight warm glow to know that all those American lawyers are getting lots of work?
No, it doesn't make any difference to me at all.
Okay.
Like poor buggers having to deal with it. I'd hate it. So, yeah. Trump said our campaign's been denied access to observe any accounting in Detroit. That's false as well. They had access. Just a whole range of allegations by Trump that were just completely false. Not even sort of half right or whatever, just completely false. And what we had, I also said, if you count the legal votes, I easily win. If you count the illegal votes, they can try to steal the election from us. And of course, what we had happening in the States then was protesters, Trump followers, outside of ballot counting, vote counting areas,
Yeah, and not all of them were there to pray.
harassing and protesting and calling out. And in Arizona, they were saying, stop the count, because we're ahead at one point. And then they were saying in other states, keep counting. So
If you're ahead, stop the count. If you're behind, keep counting.
that's right. But there was some serious issues of potential rioting.
And violence.
Yes. Now, we've always talked about inciting violence as a no-no when it comes to free speech. And I think people in the media, mainstream media, were basically making a calculation that his comments were really inciting violence. Even though he wasn't saying go out and riot, he was basically whipping up people into a frenzy that I think people saw as dangerous, both physically for ballot counters and officials and to the system of democracy in America as a concept. I think they saw it as being really dangerous. And at that point, they started watching his press conferences really closely, and they obviously had a predetermined idea that if he keeps up with this, we're just going to stop. So several of the news organisations just after a minute or two said, we're going to stop right there. He's telling falsehoods. We're not going to continue with this. We're stopping a press conference by the President of the United States.
It's a big call, isn't it?
But I think a good one. What do you think, 12th Man? Because you're a lover of free speech and you don't like censorship. What's your view on this one?
I don't have a strong view, but they made a judgment. I think it was a reasonable judgment. I don't know. I mean, Trump wasn't really saying anything new. He was just repeating the same old bullshit that he makes up as he goes along. And perhaps the people on the floor of the studio decided, well, we're not going to hear anything new here, and he's just,
Well, new as in he'd said the same things in the previous days. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, he had no specific evidence, did he?
No.
It was just, and as he does, he just makes it up as he goes along, basically.
Oh, you just got to look at Twitter. Like most of Trump's tweets were marked as being disingenuous or whatever the term was.
Yeah. And they didn't stop the tweets. No, I am against censorship, and even a fool like Trump, deserves to be uncensored on the whole.
What do you think of the warning labels on Twitter? So 11 of the president's 32 tweets since Election Day have been placed behind a warning label saying they are disputed. So people would have to sort of see that warning label and then continue on. Do you think that's okay by Twitter to do that? You don't have an issue with it?
Presumably, I don't have a big issue with it.
Okay.
But look, I think that the real fear was that some of those supporters who went to the vote counting centres might have been armed and might have tried to break in and
shoot people.
physically stop the counting. You know what I mean? I mean, if that one crazy, shot up a pizza parlour on a rumour, and there's the President of the United States saying, they're cheating, they're stealing the election, they're taking, in other words, they're cancelling your vote, to his supporters. I imagine there would have been more than a few people who might have taken it upon themselves to go and physically try and do something about it. So I think there was a very real danger of violence, and I think that's what they were thinking of too.
Very good. I thought we were going to get some more pushback from you on this issue.
Oh,
so
no, I mean,
good.
Trump, Trump has plenty of opportunities to say what he wants to say. It's not as if he's a guy lacking access to,
Indeed.
to the media.
One other interesting thing here, Facebook removed a fast-growing group, Stop the Steal group, which called for boots on the ground to protect the integrity of the vote. And it was adding 1,000 new members every 10 seconds. And had grown to 365,000 members in a day.
If only the Iron Fist Velvet Glove podcast could achieve those sort of
1,000 new
figures.
members every 10 seconds.
That's very frightening.
Yeah.
It's 60,000 a minute.
So Facebook cancelled that group. They say the group was organised around the delegitimisation of the election process, and we saw worrying calls for violence from some members. So I agree with Facebook on putting a stop to that group as well. It sounds like you do as well, Paul.
I don't have a problem.
Yep. And just in other sorts of free speech type issues, Steve Bannon was banned by Twitter because he called for the beheading of Fauci.
For God's sake.
I think he was probably speaking metaphorically, but it was pretty inflammatory language, heads on pikes.
On Thursday, former Trump advisor Steve Bannon said Trump should put Dr. Fauci and FBI Director Christopher Wray's, quote, heads on pikes during a live taping of his podcast.
Why those two? Why was he picking on those two?
Well, because he doesn't like